Hey guys, today we'll be seeing about how we can create a extension or CoC of form data field. So for that, what I will do, I will go back to my vendor group form. Just a second here, let me sign in. So let me sign, yeah, here we go. Yep. So the scenario is that whenever we'll create a new vendor, for example, let's say I created a vendor named as 20, something like this, and when I save it, okay, so if the terms of payment is not mentioned, then I will simply, throw an error. So we are going to see on that scenario. So for that, we'll take our vendor group form first. Let me open this form. Let me expand this node. Expand. So we'll see this particular field payment term ID. Okay, and we are going to focus on this method, validate method. Okay, so we'll say if the payment term ID is not mentioned, so we'll simply display an error message. Okay, now to create an CoC, we need to create a class here. So I will simply create a class, and I will say name as vend group, and since I'm creating the action of form data field, so I will write up df underscore extension. So writing extension is mandatory if you are creating any type of CoC, and the next call is mandatory. Also, we need to decorate our class. Okay, so here as usual, we'll simply remove this keyword from here. Okay, and here I will use a function called as extension of. This is a function, so I will start it, end it, and I'm also going to end this from square bracket. Now we are going to create an extension of form data field. So we'll say form data field. 1 second, it got freezed here. So I've resumed the video. So form data second guys. Form data field str. That function is not getting visible here, but we need to write this only. So we need to write the name of our form. The name of our form is nothing vend group. Okay, so here I will write name of my form, that is vend group, this one. Then I need to write the data source of my form, that is again vend group, this data source, this one. So I will write here name of my data source, and then we need to write here name of our field, that is payment term ID. Okay, our CoC decoration is completed. Now we'll do we are going to use a function called validate. So I will say public boolean so I'm going to use the validate function here. So I'll say public boolean, and this will be a boolean type of field. We'll get a boolean type of field, so I will say validate here. I'll start and end this function, and here I'm going to define a variable named as a boolean ret return, and I will simply do a call here. So then I will call my next ret equals to validate, and at the end I need to return this type. So I will say return ret. Okay, so our boiler syntax code is ready. Public boolean valid. Okay, next is not mentioned here. 1 second. Visual Studio is freeze checking here. Next call. Set this. Okay. Now our boiler syntax code is ready. Now we will get a data source object here. Okay, so let me define a variable here named as form data object, and should be capital here, and do the proper formatting. Okay, and this one is getting freezed. So we have form data object with us, form data object equals to, so we can simply use this here, but we'll typecast and decorate this. So we are going to use a function called any2 object. I will put this inside this, and I will say as form data object. Very close. Now we have our form data object with us. Now from our form data object we could get the data source. So I will simply use, okay, 1 second here, Visual Studio issue. So from our form data object we could easily get data source. Right now this data source should be stored in a form data source object. So I will say here form data source fds equals to form data object. So here we have our form data source. Okay, now from our form data source we could easily get buffer. Now to get the buffer we need to define a table variable here. So we are using a table called as when group. Okay, so when group, and I already have my data source, so I can simply use fds.cursor function to get the current value. Okay, let me write code here. See, from our when group, so we've defined a when group here, and here I'm defining my table buffer group. Here I'm defining my buffer when the group equals to, I'll say fds.cursor cursor. So we'll paste this code from here to here. There's some issue in Visual Studio. Now we have the current buffer into this particular variable when group. So now I can check condition if my when group dot payment term id, okay, and if the value is not available here, so I need to put here not as well, then I'm going to simply return I will use this function called check field, and here I will simply say payment term is mandatory. Okay, and I will close this. So let me copy this code, paste it here. Okay, so here this is fine, and we are going to do a return at the end. So we'll simply do a build of this code. So guys, the build is completed. Now we are going to test this functionality. Now we need to remember, when we'll do modification only in this particular field, then only this code will trigger, because you have created a CoC of form data field. So if I change 30 to 15, this will perfectly get saved. Okay, but as soon as I will try to remove this value from this field, now this field is empty. Now when this field is empty, we have written the code that this should trigger. That is, the payment term is mandatory here. So now when I will try to save it, so this will give me that error. As soon as I will give any value, let's say I give this, so it will perfectly get saved. Okay, but when you will try to remove the value, then it will show you that this particular warning that payment term is mandatory. So again, let me reiterate. Here we have to create a CoC of form data field. We need to write extension of form data field. Here we need to pass name of our form, then data source, then the actual form data source field. Now we have created CoC of validate field. So this validate field will only trigger for this particular field. Okay, and now we have defined here a variable that is return. We have done next call here, and here we simply return. Now when you type this into this particular form, this is nothing but form data object. So we have simply typecasted it like this, and into object this has form data object. Now from this form data object, we can easily get form data source. So I've stored the form data source into this particular variable. Now from this variable, we could easily get the current record of our vendor group. Here we are checking if vendor group is basically null, then we are going to say payment term is mandatory, and here we are storing the false value, and at the end we are simply returning the value. So thank you so much for watching this video.